Are we recording? Are we live?
We're live.
We are live. For those of you that are listening, this is the BizJitsu Podcast. This is Vince Pacleb, your host. I'm here with Dr. Archie with Groundwork Chiropractic. Excited to do a catch-up episode. Dr. Archie, what's happening?
What's up? What's up? What's up? We're here. We're here.
We are live. So a couple things, man. We got several things to catch up on. I got a couple kind of subject topics I wanted to catch up with you on or get your perspective on as I've been working on my project. That thing's coming to life, and there's a couple things that was relevant. I had another random scenario this weekend that I was going through, and I'm like, this would be a good conversation for Dr. Archie. But anyways, before we jump in, what's the latest and the greatest with The Office?
Well, let's do it because starting from today, we've been trying to really get everything furnished for the office, and this whole process, I was like, man, this feels like we are putting together, like we had an apartment up in the Bay Area,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels like we're doing this again. Like we gotta get little things, like little cleaning supplies. Like we gotta get all these little things, chairs, tables. Like, so we're doing all this stuff, and it just reminded me back when we were trying to furnish an apartment that we used to live in, man. But it's a little bit more difficult because now you gotta picture yourself or picture what the intention is in each space, right? So this morning I was putting up some slats on the walls. There was a post.
Did you end up doing it yourself?
I did.
Nice.
I was like, I'm just gonna YouTube this shit and figure it out myself here. But yeah, I ended up figuring it out. It took me about 5 hours this morning. I was up like at 6 a.m. this morning at the office, just putting up those walls. And putting up other little things too that my wife bought, that things like a little basket where people can put their belongings in, and like we did quite a bit today. Actually, we put up like all my accolades and everything that I need to actually have a legitimate business running, all those things that have to be showing on the wall.
Yeah, all your credentials and stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So that was a good feeling to have, like just putting it up there. But I'll be posting some like little bit of time lapse things that I've been doing today pretty soon. But yeah, that's where we're at, and getting the website built. I'm working with someone that's really restructuring the original website I did. Like he's really ripping it apart. The website I try to do by myself. So, I'm like the kind of guy who's like, I'm gonna try to do it myself. And then when I ask a professional, he's just started like he literally
shaking his head.
Basically, man, he's just like, man, what is this stuff, man? But it's good. We're almost to we're almost at the end. We're almost finalizing it. There's a bunch of back and forths, but I'm glad I'm paying someone to do it because, man, I want to know some of the things that he's doing to put in the website, and just getting another perspective really helps. So, yeah, if you just started business and you're trying to figure out how to run a website, just have someone do it for you. You don't want to learn those mistakes later, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
So that's where we're at. What else is going on? I got my business cards finally. They came in. What else happened? Got some uniforms.
Nice.
For myself. So crazy thing was I took 4 new patients today while I was at the office. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, just like on a low barrier entry. Some friends of mine, my buddy brought his daughter and his mom, so I saw them, and it was a good feeling to actually have that transaction for the first time, right? It's like, oh man, this is actually it.
It's
And
real.
yeah, this is actually happening, right? And the crazy part is that my office, it's you can see through it. You can see everything. Like you can see me doing work. You can see people sitting in there. So there's other people walking by, and they're like, "Hey, can I come in? Like, you guys have any appointments available?" Like, so I got two people scheduled on Thursday when I can go back, and so it's been a blessing so far. It's been overwhelming, but yeah, it was good to get some exposure while doing that. It also during that process, I realized like, man, I gotta figure out my systems a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that was part of what I want to chat about. And congratulations on the first client, dude. That's exciting.
yeah. It was good.
Yeah,
It felt really good.
super, super cool.
Yeah.
So this is going to kind of go down one of the things I wanted to chat with you about. Um, so, you're putting all this together. You're in this construction / building the experience kind of phase of the business. And have you heard the term touch points?
Mm, in in business,
Yeah, or
no.
just in anything.
I have an idea of what you mean by touch points, but
So I learned this early on in my fitness career. And if you remember the episode we did with Poilak, and Poilak he referenced a training that I did,
uh-huh.
and I was given this example, and of you're a member at a new gym, and you're nervous, right? Because you need the gym, but you're a little intimidated by the gym, and you go to the front desk, and maybe that person treats you kind of indifferent, and they do their job. They do just enough to get their job done, but you don't really feel 100% pleasant. Then you go to the restroom. You're not sure where to put your stuff, and locker room maybe not as clean as you would want it to be, especially if you're putting away your personal belongings, things like your phone, your wallet, your keys, all those things. Like you would want it to feel safe. And then you go to the restroom, you wash your hands, and there's no soap. And then you go to the paper towel, and like, hey, there's no paper towel. And you go to finally now you're ready to go meet your trainer, and your trainer's late, right? So, anyways, I did this whole training around it, and really, what it was all built around is this concept of touch points. And when you think of client interaction or prospect interaction, there's going to be people out there that will interact with you, dozens of times before they even enter into their facility. And by the time they enter into the facility, literally they're going to be having all of these touch points, right? Everything down from the time they get out of their car to the time they walk through the door, to the time that they're greeted, to the time that they fill out pieces of paper. I mean, just every little piece, right? That would be classified as a touch point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think as you're going through the process, I think it's important that you start checking the boxes around what are the critical touch points, and then what
Mm-hmm.
are the details inside the critical touch points. So it's actually cool because you're what I wanted to just bring into the conversation today was really built around, hey, what is someone going to expect when they walk in to your facility or into your office?
Mm-hmm.
What could they expect? And the other flip side of it is, if I'm a prospect and I'm looking up the website, right? Like, what could they expect? So,
Yeah.
anyways, we'll start with that, right? So, when you say, your first couple transactions, you realize, oh man, I'm gonna have to tighten up my systems. Like,
Yeah.
what exactly do you see is the deficiency right now?
Well, the first thing that really bothered me was I the and this is our fault. Like we should have been more prepared. We need like a little partition, and I've been holding that off. And I'm like, do I want to buy one? Do I want to make it myself? And we thought we could use it in a different way because there is access to other rooms, like private rooms for them to change. That requires me to have them, that requires them to wear a gown for an examination. So
Hmm.
they would have to walk all the way to the bathroom because there's a community bathroom for all the businesses, and then come back to my office. So I didn't like that process.
Yeah.
So, but I knew I wanted to put a partition to do that. That's one part. The other part was just little things like the desk I had was just when I do consultations, I thought I wanted like a circle desk where it feels like it's a meeting, right? Like we're like all together, but the space just didn't provide that. Like I guess I have to restructure. I got to rethink how I want that patient experience during a consultation. So that's one other thing. The other thing was, man, I'm trying to remember. Um, the prospect that came in, like, hey, can I come in? Can I make an appointment? I did it myself. Luckily, I had the time to do it,
Mhm.
but there should be a little bit more efficient way in doing that, right? I should, hey, scan this QR code, book an appointment or something. But, I had the time, like, I brought him in and scheduled him. That probably would have been better, but there's going to be times where I won't have that much time to do that. So I want to be prepared for that. What else? Man, it just happened today. So I'm like, there's probably a lot more other things that I could be more efficient on as far as the workflow. But the biggest thing was, man, I can't have them leave the office and come back in for that. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I think that those are the, when you look at like the big rocks of the
yeah,
experience,
yeah.
I would be paying super close attention, right? And even like the way that you're thinking about it right now, you're going to go through iterations, right? There's going
Mm-hmm.
to be continual evolution, right? Of, hey, here's how it was when we started, and we continue to add and build and do those things. We had talked about that on Christian Aguilera's episode of just, hey, here are the kind of major things that we wanted to do, and then we kind of built,
Mm-hmm.
more and more detail along the way. What I would be thinking about is, so when you think of the life cycle of a client, and this is really with any business, there's going to be the pre-client phase, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is all of the marketing/experience. And that's when they're doing their homework, right? They're realizing, one, that they have a need for a chiropractor, right? Because there's some degree of pain. There's some issue that is going on that they need addressed and need a professional to help them. And they could kind of no longer do it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they're doing their homework. And then there's the actual time when they are during, right? So in this case, it'll be during that initial consultation, right? What does that look like? And then the presentation, right? So that's part of the consultation. And then the post, right? What happens when they leave? And then that same thing comes back, because what is different about, your type of service is somebody pays you money or makes a commitment to pay you money, and then they got to come back and do the service and pay for it again, right? So it's very similar to personal training. It's not like I go to Costco to buy a TV and I pay $2,000 and I walk out with a TV. It's like, no, I may get a what do they call it? A service package from you?
Mm-hmm. Care plan.
A care plan, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I may go through the whole thing. I do the homework. I say, Dr. Archie's my guy. I like the facility. Everything looks good. All the reviews look good. The website looks good. The process was very easy for me to come in. I went down. I met him. It was, it made a lot of sense. I went through the whole thing. I bought a care plan, but now I have to execute the care plan, right? So I give you X amount of dollars on this day. Maybe I give you X amount of dollars on another day. But through that process, I still have to continue to come back, show up, do that
Mm-hmm.
whole, process, whatever, twice a week for 16 weeks. Like, well, what's a standard care plan for?
Anywhere from 3 to 5 months.
Okay.
That's typically, and then anywhere from once to twice a week for that long.
Yeah. So, you call it, how many weeks is that? That's 20 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 20 weeks, 2 times a week. So 40 times you're going to have to go through that process, checking in, going, changing, putting their stuff away, having the actual service or procedure. Or what do you call that when someone goes
When
to
they,
see you?
when they come for just an adjustment, if it's just an adjustment, but usually the first day is the initial consultation examination.
Yep.
Yeah. But after that, it's just adjustments. Then
Got it.
yeah.
Right. So I got to come back. I
Yeah.
got to do the adjustment. I got to go through that process of the adjustment. I got to leave, and then all the things that come along with that. Right. I think about like whether it's a dentist, right, where the dentist, they're trying to book you for your next appointment, and they already have part of that, because it's almost like one of those things. Like, okay, if they don't book me by the time I leave, or I don't know exactly when they're coming back, like I may never come back. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, I think that's all part of the process, right? So when you think of all of the, I'll use air quotes, touch points, those are things that are all going to be part of that experience that people pay for, right? So
Yeah.
as you're going through that, is there anything particular that stands out, like from your own experience, or just like what you ultimately want to be able to deliver, that you think is like, will make the facility unique?
One thing in particular that's going to make it unique is offering an on-site X-ray imaging.
Hmm.
That's going to be the biggest touch point for anyone.
Right.
Looking at people's bodies from the outside, it may not be the same thing on the inside, right? So there are things that I am currently seeing at our office that we're catching. Um, and the only way we would have caught it is if we did imaging. And if we didn't, they could get hurt, right? Or
Wow.
just some other things. There's other underlying conditions or whatnot. So um, that's helped quite a few people, and you never know. That one person you don't image and you adjust could be, fatally hurt. So
Wow.
yeah.
That those are things I think I'm sure, like as you're building out the website and as you're building out the marketing, like those are things that should be all the big call outs, right? Of
Yeah.
what makes you different, and just that experience, right? If that's going to be like the focal point, like everything that leads up to it should be, it should be all experiential too, right? It's not just a
The
check
one
the
thing.
yep, you got an X-ray,
Yeah.
and that's just
Yeah.
part of the care plan. Like all that stuff should be all part of
Part
the
of it. But
part of the
I think
experience.
also, to look further deep, I mean, that was just one touch point, but I think, my focus of focusing on nervous system function, right? We do a lot of, or I do personally do a lot of nervous system function tests
Mm-hmm.
to
What does
examine
that
how
entail?
that entails thermography, EMG, and heart rate variability. So these are all um, related to how your nervous system is functioning, right? So we do these tests in a seated position and see how efficiently your posture is in a seated position through surface level EMG. When you're seated, you should be efficiently working your muscles. But if someone is misaligned or they're in some type of pain, that that test will detect where those imbalances or where they inefficiently are using their muscles. And then on top of that, the thermography is looking for levels of heat reading. And that heat reading tells us that there's blood being promoted to that area. Your body is focusing on healing that area. Whenever there's blood promoted to that area, your body's focusing on healing. So um, a lot of these tests you can't see is through just touching or feeling, right? That someone can be feeling these symptoms and some people cannot. And then the heart rate variability, it's all about, I like to say, how much you got in the gas tank. Like if you
Mm.
can't sit there and control how your heart rate is, you got something going on, right? I can't tell exactly what it is, but is there a diet? How's your diet? How you are physically? Are you in a lot of pain? Right. So all about functionality. Um, I think that's I think that's what we offer. That's a little bit unique around the area. And then also, you know, uh, like really, I guess everyone does this is postural assessments, but it's more of like a neurological approach when we do the functional tests. So um, it's better on that topic if someone goes through it. It's a easier to go through that than explaining it.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what's unique about all those things, right, is like those are um, the value proposition,
Mm-hmm.
right, of what people are paying for. And you can even look at like simple things with those, I'll kind of go back to the touch points, even down to like the smallest and littlest things, right? Like, what does it feel like when somebody is sitting in your lobby? Like, literally, what does it feel like? Like the type of chair that they're
Mm-hmm.
sitting in. And when they are sitting, depending upon like what direction they're sitting, like what are they looking at when they're waiting for, you, right? Is there a TV? Is it educational? Is it entertainment? Is it, hey, if we're driving a family friendly type of environment, is there places for the kids to use stuff? Even when you're, in the scenario of, where people are changing, right? Of, hey, where do they put their clothes?
Mm-hmm.
Right? When they are in the gown, right? Is there a place, that is, organized where they can put their stuff down?
Mm-hmm.
What's the lighting look like inside those things, right? So, I think all of those things are all that's all part of the value proposition,
Yeah.
right? Because people do notice those things, right?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there was a what's it called? A hydration and IV place. And what was really unique about it, so my wife and I didn't even go into it. My wife and I were going to a restaurant, and Russ and I saw this IV place. I'm like, oh, that'd be interesting. And part of what was super interesting was in the lobby, they had like some real cool contemporary seating. And again, it was very inviting, right? And they were closed, right? If they were open, I would have walked in for sure. But again, it's in those small details of the way that it's presented to be able to look like, man, it actually looks like an inviting place for me to be able to go and walk in. And those are all part of the touch point, right? Because there's a visual touch point of what it looks like from the street view as we were walking by. And the
Mm-hmm.
other part of it too is like, okay, hey, that chair looked inviting enough for me to be able to sit in, and the environment looked, cool enough for me to want to come in, that it was intriguing enough that, if you can couple that with a warm greeting and a very positive experience, like, hey, that's great. Like, I'll give you another example. My kids and I, we went out to dinner, and my daughter wanted to go get boba after. And so anyways, it turned into hey, which boba place do you want to go to? And she wanted to go to a place that I have never gone into. And I'm like, I'm going to go down with you. And one, I wanted to have boba. The other one was like, I just wanted to see what this place was all about. And it was super strange because there was a person at the counter, and there was like an iPad on the wall. And anyways, the way that you order is I order on the wall, which I would have thought I would have paid in the same place that I ordered. But in order for me to pay, I had to pay the dude at the counter. And I'm like, dude, it should just be one or the other. It should just be the person that is there is going to greet me and take my order, or I'm going to go to the iPad and order and pay, which again, I'm good either way, but it just seems super strange that like, okay, hey, I had to order at the wall and then I had to pay the dude at the counter, which again, the bowl was great. It's a cool place, but it was just that was like a super weird touch point. Right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
follow where I'm going with that?
Oh, yeah.
And
I've experienced something like that too, man.
then the other flip side of it is when I was waiting for the food, I noticed this just because of I'm kind of weird like that there was part of the lobby area that had like the restaurant's kind of like storage stuff. So it's weird because there was like boxes of cups and other like stuff that's just there in the view, which again doesn't take away from the quality of the boba, but it's just a weird experience, right? Because I'm like, oh shoot, okay, the dude's standing there looking at me, but I can't order from him. I order from the wall, I can't pay on the wall, so I have to pay him. And then I'm hanging out waiting for the boba. And then in there, it's like, again, nice place, but part of it's like storage. Anyways, it's just kind of a strange experience. And those are all part of the, kind of the touch point experience that, as you're setting things up, I think, it's cool that your wife has an eye for it to be able to say, hey, let's have this. I think you said it was a basket for them to put their personal belongings and just, that's all part of that overall experience that a client or a prospective client would be able to go through.
Oh yeah. And it'll probably continue. Like there's going to be a lot of things I want to add on because I'm all about that customer experience because like to add to what you were saying, and we went to this boba shop. They had the same concept. You order on the wall, but you're able to pay there. Okay. You're able to pay at that wall. Or they can take your order. So there was no one in the restaurant. It was just us. We're like, you can look at the menu. It's up top, and then you can order it on the side. And the worker is just standing there on their phone, and we're just standing there, and they're like, "Oh, you can use the thing to order." Oh, and I'm looking at this guy. He's just on his phone. I'm like, dude, what? I was like, man, I just didn't like that experience. It's like, because we gotta do this part of your job too, so you can. And the worst part is that a rush was coming in, and then he started taking orders from other people.
Oh god, that's super frustrating. Oh my god, that's so annoying.
Because he saw a line at the little kiosk thing, the personal like self-serve kiosk.
Oh my god, dude, that's so frustrating.
I'm like,
super frustrating.
Yeah, right. So, where was I going with that? But yeah. I mean, it was just other things. Was like, man, we need a refreshment little table for people. Yeah, that's something I've been working on, and man, yeah, that's I know that's a big deal to have, especially if you're gonna have a waiting room, and
yeah, for sure. But I mean, the perspective I'd give you is like you're doing the right thing to be able to say, hey, we're going to take clients now, even though we're not fully ready. All those things. I think it's where people get stuck is wanting to have all of these amenities and everything be perfect before they go. It's like, no, dude, just go start building.
Yep.
And, obviously along the way, you want to make sure that you're doing the best you can with what you got and being very mindful of that. But, I think it's just what you're building towards and just being aware of like, hey, there's all of these touch points, because those are the things that have an impact. Like think about the conversation that we just had with Art on why he left the gym, because one interaction, he had one interaction with one employee that said, yeah, sorry, I'm not going to teach a class. And it was enough for him to not only quit, but be able to create a vengeance, right? To be able to say, I'm going to go and create my own academy and make sure no one ever has to feel like this. Yeah. Those are things that, again, it may seem very, very trivial or very, very very, very small, but those are things that add up, right? It's like, hey, when you start to have choices and, there's something of value there, right? Because it's like, yeah, there's the cost of the care plan, but there's all those small details that add up and things that compound, right? Because those are all the things that when people are there. Now, the other part of it is like, how do you interact and stay, front of mind when you're not there, right? How do you continue to stay relevant when in between their adjustments, right? If they're seeing you once a week, man, there's a lot of time between now and the next time they come back for their adjustment, right? How do you stay relevant, along the way, and how do you stay, engaged along the way? I think those are things that you just need to be mindful of and thinking about.
Absolutely. Have you ever experienced something like that where you're treated some way and you're like, man, I'm not going back there? Or
yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, those are things that,
give
I
us
think
one.
I'll give you a specific one.
Okay.
This just literally just happened, right? So, we went to a very nice steak restaurant. I mean, what historically would be extremely nice. But as we were going, the manager went and checked into every table around us besides ours. Every table. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, right? Whatever. That's totally fine. For whatever reason, maybe he missed us. And then went around again and talked to every table besides us. And I was like, man, I'm not going to make a big deal out of this thing. It was for my son's birthday. Like, I'm not going to make a big deal out of this thing. Because I don't want that to be the focal point. But my daughter had brought it up and said, why wouldn't he come and talk to us? Mm-hmm. And again, I ended up confronting him, and it turned into a whole situation, right? Which, anyways, you know, they ended up making it right. But I don't want to turn into like what do you call a male Karen? Yeah. I don't want to create an episode like that. But again, it's one of those things of like, hey, you know what? We're paying for something. And, you know, hey, if there's a touch point that didn't feel right. Yeah, I think it's, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with being vocal about it in the spirit of, hey, we would not be expected to be treated like that in a place like this, because I never want to play the victim mentality, but it just seemed very, very strange that, hey, everybody around us was greeted besides us on two different occasions, right? And again, sometimes it's very hard for someone to understand, right? I mean, you'll understand, right? Because you're Filipino, and you know, there's a certain degree of discrimination, right? I hate to bring the race card into it, but there's discrimination is real, right? Whether people want to believe it or not. And you know, there's there's times where like, hey, you know what? I'm at a top tier restaurant, and I'm there because I want to have the experience, and I'm there because I'm capable of paying for an experience like that. And when you don't get it, and it becomes so arbitrary where it's like, man, that it's almost insulting, right? So anyways, long story short, yes, I've had that experience, and it sucks. Right. And you know, again, it's one of those things where I don't think anybody intentionally projects that, but those are things where like, hey, you know what, you're operating a business, you're delivering a great experience. I mean, you got to be very, very mindful of people's experience, right? Because it's easier to be able to say, oh, you're just being sensitive. It's like, no. I'm paying for something, and hey, if everybody else gets the treatment, then I want it myself, right? But it just seems very, very strange that, hey, you're in a packed restaurant and every table around you gets greeted by the manager besides yours. Something's up.
Yeah.
Right. Something's up. Right. And it's not that, hey, I'm the unapproachable guy. Right. But it's a scenario of like, okay, well, listen, I'm curious on why that is. And, you know, again, I wasn't completely happy with the answer I got either. But again, you got to confront it when it does happen. So that those are things that just, you know, people spend their hard-earned money and their time away, you know, from their families for experience. It's like, man, you gotta deliver A+ experience, right? Because if not, because the thing is, not everybody's gonna be vocal, not everybody's gonna be aware of it. But you know, when you're dealing with somebody's health, or you're dealing with somebody's you know, asking people to spend a substantial amount of money, like, man, you got to deliver the service 100% of the time, right? And if not, like, you got to make it right. But those are things that just, man, you got to be mindful of.
Right. Yeah. I think it goes back to Art saying you got to give 120%, right?
100%.
Right. So just, man.
Yeah.
It's tough. Yeah,
it's annoying. It's what it is. It really is. Yeah. I mean, it truly is, right? Because it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I never am going to play the victim, but I'm also I'm not going to lay down either. Where if I sense something's not right, I'm going to be vocal about it and address it. And you know, again, it sucks that experience takes away from the real reason that you're there. Say, you know what, you go to a nice restaurant because you want to have some good food and you want to have a good experience. And when that doesn't happen, you know, you either walk away and you be the victim because you don't speak up, or you speak up because, like, hey, you know what, there's other people that probably have felt this way, and you know, I'm going to speak up. I'm not going to create a scene, but I'm going to address it, and I'm going to be professional about it. But again, it just sucks that that takes away from the time and the experience itself, right? Because those things are like, you know what? I don't want to come back. That's kind of lame.
Yeah. I think you said it right. Like it takes away the experience that you expected, right? Like,
Yeah.
you wanted this and you got something else,
Yeah,
Just,
exactly. Yeah. I wanted to pay for a Ferrari and I was walking out with a Honda. You know what I mean? I went to the
Yeah.
Ferrari dealership because I wanted a Ferrari, but I
Uh-huh.
walked out with a Honda. Like, no, man, it don't fly
Yeah.
that. It doesn't work that way. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a chiropractic, whether it's a car dealership, it's like, man,
Yeah.
you're going through that for a very specific reason,
Mm-hmm.
and you should be getting what you pay for and what you expect out of it. And if not, then hey, where to put your business, down the
Right.
road.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, so I'm gonna switch gears here real
Okay.
quick about so one was talking about touch points. The other thing is so when we had first started this project, I had talked to you about like, man, you got to develop your roster,
Yeah.
right? You got to develop your roster, and you got to build out your team. And that doesn't mean you're going to hire a bunch of employees. It just means that, hey, you got to have your team, right? So like Ross and I, for our business, we have a CPA, and Nate's our attorney on things, and there's people that we would work through. Again, we were talking about the other day of like, hey, we got to talk to the guys about getting the t-shirts, and we have Mike to be able to help us with logo stuff, right? So as you start building out your team, what's interesting is so I've been trying to solve this problem so I'm launching this consulting project,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm super stoked about it. But I'm in this space where like, hey, I am doing all the infrastructure stuff, right? So again, phase one is all the infrastructure stuff. So like right now, I'm currently in the mix, up to my eyeballs in doing that. And I was speaking with one of the larger consultants in this firm, and he uses virtual assistants. And anyways, I know that there's virtual assistants that are out there, right? And he gave me some referrals of folks that have been doing it for him. One of them's been doing it upwards of 8 years, right, for everything. And it's super fascinating because they do everything from like, hey, we could export a database and they'll manually input it. And, the all the automation that, hey, if this specific lead type should have these specific emails, like instead of me doing each and every one, like they could create the draft, we would approve it, and they would help set up some of that infrastructure. I'm like, man, that's super interesting. So I'm in this process right now of going through virtual assistants. Do you know how virtual assistants work?
Not exactly. I was just gonna ask you, is there a person behind her or
Oh yeah.
is it okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Okay.
the way that it works is there's virtual assistant companies that employ people in countries like the Philippines and various parts of India that are highly skilled, extremely educated, speak the language, familiar with technology, and familiar with marketing, and they have all the education background. They just choose to live in places like the Philippines, and you would create a contract with them. You would provide them with a scope of work, and you would enter into an agreement with them saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to hire you for X amount of dollars per hour. And this is the work that I would want to be able to get done. And here's a time frame. And you would manage them just like an employee, but they're virtual.
That's interesting.
And yeah, super interesting. Right. So I'm in that process right now of going through virtual assistant. And again, it's one of those things where part of me has this like kind of degree of guilt of like, man, I'm going to export labor that you could pay somebody stateside to do it. The problem is like when you think about the business, like, okay, well, I'm in still very early infancy. Like I haven't even launched this thing yet. So to be able to say, I'm going to hire somebody, like, man, that doesn't necessarily make sense either, right? I'm not even creating any revenue yet. So, part of it is, fortunately, is because I'm plugging myself into a network. There are people that already have gone through, a lot of that work, which, will help speed up some of the process and help some of the things that could come along with that. But again, it's one of those things where I'm like, man, that's a very interesting thing. I had worked with a marketing company before that they had virtual assistants that they did. Some of the work they hired. I hired the company that was a U.S. company out of Orange County, and the work that they did was done virtually overseas, right? And when I do my staffing and recruiting, right, one of the firm identified that does the fulfillment, they have a virtual assistant that does some of the work on LinkedIn. So again, I know that it could be done. I know that it works, right? I just never thought about doing it for my own business. But anyways, I was literally thinking about you as I was going through this process, because I'm like, I wonder if Archie has put much thought to that, right? Because when you start to think about, like, I'll give you an example. So like part of the things that they could do is, as we deploy marketing, they're going to be able to filter, like go through my email box and, go through all those things, because they'll be the ones that helping me set up all the automation, and they could ever do everything down to helping me schedule appointments and put them into my calendar and all those things. So now all I got to do is show up for my appointment.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, I wonder if that would be beneficial, or even something that is in the world of chiropractic, right? Of like, hey, I wonder if there's people that are out there that specialize in, chiropractic appointment setting, in the virtual assistant world. So anyways, literally I was, as I was going through this, just kind of starting to have some of my conversations. I was curious if you've heard of anything like that.
Yeah, not overseas though. There's a company actually out in Northern California that offers these types of services.
Yep, like a vendor.
Yeah, there is a vendor that offers those, but I know from the chiropractic offices that I've known, they typically use that same service. Like all the chiropractic profession like to use that one vendor. But for me personally, using that, I can't see myself using that for some reason. Maybe because of my experience going through them. When I try to call credit card companies, I just needed to order some contacts, and I was calling during an after hours time, and I got this automated like someone. It was just some automated service. There was, I don't know, just some of the experience that I've had. It just seemed like it didn't get anything accomplished when I spoke with them. But who knows? I don't know. Maybe if there's probably different levels to these. What do you call it? Virtual assistants, right? Maybe you got to pay a little bit more money for a little bit better service for your customers or something.
Yeah, for me it's very interesting, right? Because like the way I'm thinking about it is anything that would be online via email, because I'll be able to monitor what that is, and any like automations that they would set up, and inside of the CRM, all that stuff that would be set up, like all of that could be very tedious. Importing lists and sorting them and assigning lead types and all those things. Like I could see me hiring a virtual assistant to do all that work, because it's just extremely time consuming. Plus also feel like it takes the thinking of like, okay, hey, I need to write a 5 email, campaign, right? If someone can at least lay down the foundation, get 80% of it, like I'll go back and tighten it up and put the other 20% in. And what's interesting is this specific organization has assistants that have helped some of their top broker offices with setting that up. And one of the guys that is kind of working with me to be able to help me get this set up, he is recommending the idea of that, of just like, hey, listen, unless you want to do it yourself, but you have very limited time, it's going to take you forever to be able to get it to the way you want it. Like, hey, there's you could outsource it, and it's done overseas, so like it's super cost effective. Like, man, that's a very interesting concept. and again, there are degrees of like they could do outbound phone calls, different things like that, which I wouldn't want them to do. I think any email, text communication, things that I can monitor of like, hey, send this out on these days, and if they respond to this, like these are the responses that I want, and here's the availability on my calendar. Like I think that is totally fine because those are things that, I mean, you could get lost in just getting people onto a appointment, right? But if there's someone managing that, I think that there's there's some unique value around that.
I think there's a lot of value in that because like the 2 patients I saw today, I haven't even scheduled them yet. I know it's in my head. I got it in writing.
Yeah.
It's not in my systems yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, I know there's a lot of value behind that, but it also got me thinking like if I want to implement this now, it should be now.
Mm-hmm.
It should be now because if I start making my systems and then later on, it might be a lot. It could be more difficult to change to add a virtual assistant when you figure everything out, right? I don't know. That's the way I'm seeing it right now. Now that I'm thinking about it, but I think I think there's
it's super. It's something very interesting to entertain.
Yeah,
right? I think it's a scenario like we are both at a phase where it's like, hey, nothing's off the table, right? Where I'm just trying to think of like, how do you get the most done in the least amount of time while maximizing the amount of time I do have to put towards a project, right? Dude, another thing I wanted to chat with you about, this is pretty random. So, Caesar from TKJJ? C's?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Big dude, white belt. Always in the boxing classes.
Yeah, always in boxing classes. So he has a business that is junk removal and disposal. Did you know that?
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he has a dumpster.
Okay.
And he comes by your house and you rent the dumpster and you put whatever you want into the dumpster and he takes it to the to wherever they unload it, to the landfill, and does it. And you pay a flat fee. And we've done that before, right? Whenever we clean out stuff. So he had messaged me saying, hey man, like I got this business if you know anybody. And I'm like, dude, we could use it. So I'd messaged him. And anyways, we had got rid of a bunch of stuff, right? Some old lawn furniture and some old barbecues and just stuff that was in the garage that's just like doesn't work and just put there, right? Old vacuums, just stuff, right? That's around the house. So we cleared out a bunch of stuff. And just like any other scenario, right? When you clear out a bunch of stuff, it always makes room for more stuff. So we literally cleaned out all of our backyard. We had some old like furniture that we've had for some time and just a bunch of an old fire pit and just a bunch of stuff. So that encouraged Ross to go buy a bunch of new furniture for the backyard for summer and a new barbecue and all this stuff. Anyway, she ordered it online and it made me think of you because you had shown like you and your wife were like putting together furniture. Right. So anyways, Ross and I were putting some of that stuff together and, my son graduated from trade school. So when he graduated from trade school, he bought this like massive tool set with all kinds of tools for everything, right? Tools for tools. Right. Mm-hmm. And anyways, I'm not a handyman type of guy. Like I could put stuff together, but I'm not the handyman kind of guy. So I have a pretty limited range of tools that I could use. Right. I mean, enough to put stuff together, but I mean, it is fascinating. Again, this seems really silly, right? But it seems super fascinating when you have the right tools, how much faster you can move to put things together. And again, these are not new tools. I mean, literally there were just variations of screwdrivers and ratchet wrenches and just variations of that were more appropriate for the scenario versus like the ones that come in the box. You know what I'm talking about? Like when you order something and they have like these little wrenches and these little Allen wrenches and like you got to kind of manually screw these things in. I mean, it is mind blowing how fast you could get things done when again, same exact instruction, same exact thing. It's just the tools that you're using are just higher quality and meant for that specific occasion, not just the, cheap little wrench that they use. It made me think of you, one, because you were recently doing that at your office. And two, I was like, man, this is an interesting conversation. I know that you have a hard stop, but I think this is, an interesting thought here. It's just, as you start, or as you've been going through this process, has there been any, and not even physical tools like for installing stuff, but is there any specific tools that come to mind that you think are going to be very important? And I'll give you an example of where I'm going with this. So like the consulting business, like my recruiting business, is very business development dependent, meaning it's just all lead generation and you got to work leads. Mm-hmm. And then as you work leads, there's going to be people that are interested, but not right now, people that are not interested, people that are like, hey, I'm not interested, let me speak to somebody else, or like, hey, I'm not the right person, you should speak to this person. So it's very dependent upon, managing thousands of leads at a time, right? In order to be able to get things done, right? At least at the volume that I want to be able to take it to. So part of this virtual assistant is that, right, is being able to manage the lead management. The other part of it is a CRM, right? We had talked about this in the past, right? A client relation manager, right? Where software that takes all this data and all these contacts and helps you manage them, right? Part of it is automated. Part of it is very task oriented and just helps you understand like, hey, on these days I should be calling these people. Mm-hmm. So those are some very specific tools, right? One, the virtual assistant, I think, is a very specific tool. The other part of it is the CRM. The other part of it is I've been speaking with a vendor that is an AI vendor. Mm. And what they do is they take specific databases and they utilize AI to be able to say, hey, you sent out these messages to these people and these people opened up the emails right away. You should send them this follow-up email. Hey, this person didn't open the email, so you should follow up with this email, right? So again, it's an AI driven tool that helps you sort through all of these different things, right? So anyways, as I've been going through this process, I've been thinking about like, man, I'm going to have to get some tools in place in order for me to get this done correctly, right? Again, part of it, the virtual assistant, the other part of it is this AI tool. The other part of it's the CRM and making sure that's set up correctly. When you're going through this, is there any specific tools that you're thinking about that you're like, man, I should probably do a little bit more homework or a little bit more thought? And again, maybe it's machines, maybe it's, again, I don't know. Have you put much thought into that?
There's actually a lot of software that I have invested into or actually need to actually get the office functioning and running. And there's little tools in there like a CRM specifically in our EHR software. The service that they presented to me like, oh, this is an add-on to the software that you're purchasing. And it'll be very valuable for you to use it. I'm like, okay, let's do it. I haven't used it because it's like, man, I need to spend more time doing it.
Yeah.
Because you can see how many people you can see how many people you are seeing that day, how many people are not scheduled, right? Like who everyone in your database. You can email, you can send a campaign, you can do announcements, you can basically have every touch point you want with your client base, right? You can that's definitely one of the tools I need to dive into a little bit more and be utilizing because I started an email campaign. I didn't release it, but I have like about 12 weeks right now of like an email campaign. So I have to actually start using it pretty soon. Just
as you put more thought into that, right? I mean, these are all parts of the touch point and experience, and those are all critical pieces to the puzzle, man. So keep building. I know you got a hard stop. You good?
Yeah, we got about 2 minutes.
All right. Yeah. Before we jump, what else you got? It's a good combo, man. I think that was an hour.
Yeah.
Or almost an hour, I should say.
It's yeah, just keep building right now, man. Um,
What's been the biggest lesson so far?
Biggest lesson. We talk about it all the time. Preparation. I'm kind of like what Chris Aguilera is like. All of it's on impulse right now. Oh man, I need this because I didn't have it at that moment. So I'm like, dude, that's how I'm practically operating right now, and I need to get ahead of it because like
Yeah.
it's starting to catch up to me right now. Like I'm just doing. I know what I need to do, but I need to get more ahead of it now. Yeah, that's my biggest lesson right now.
Yeah. My suggestion, man, write it down, write it down, write it down, write it down. I have
Yeah.
like all these, dude, right now um, have all these different projects going. So I have like Google Docs on top of Google Docs that are, some of it's just random ideas of just getting these thoughts out of my head. And the other part is like, okay, this is an action item. I got to ask this person, I got to contact this person. This is on my task list, and just take
Hmm.
all your ideas out, put it on paper. Right? It's
Yeah.
safest bet. At least that way, when you go back through it, you know exactly what your thoughts were.
Hmm.
Plus, also
Hmm.
too, I think the main thing, like I'm trying to be very, very cautious about this, um, is my spending. Right? On our next call, we should go through the financial model that I had built for
Okay.
this. Um, I think it'll be illuminating to share with you. Yeah, so like literally, I'm trying to, hey, before I spend anything actually through actual transaction, I want to make sure that all that stuff's all thought out, mapped out, best I can. Right? There's gonna be some spontaneous just working capital stuff that you're gonna need to be ready to buy because you just didn't think of it. But
Right.
the other part was just being very thoughtful on how the financial um, you know, pieces of the puzzle come together. And I had this model. I think I shared that with you. That was a couple weeks ago. I had a referral from a finance friend of mine help me build out this model, and it's literally builds out, and you'll see how it all, why some of this kind of virtual system, some of this stuff, why it's so important. But anyways, we'll connect on our next episode.
For sure.
Cool, man. All right, dude. Well, listen, congrats on the first transaction. Keep building.
Yeah.
One other thing that you need to make sure you put out there, you should get like a little A-frame, right? That you, especially when you're there, right? That has, something about like walk-ins welcome,
Mm.
right? To keep it really, real simple. So that way, when people are walking by, they literally an A-frame that like points into the door, right?
Yeah. So
That,
simple.
oh, dude, super simple, right? Because
Yeah.
you may be in there working out, like this morning you're hanging up slat wall, right? And people are walking by, and they're probably wondering if they could walk in. Like literally, I would have like an A-frame built that says,
Okay.
whatever, free care package consultation, walk-ins welcome, something so real simple, direct to the point with
Yeah.
like an arrow that
Yeah.
points people in. That
For
way,
sure.
again, while you're there, that way you don't have to worry about like, oh man, let me flag that person down. Like, okay, at least you threw out some kind of net. I mean,
Yeah.
even if they let you put it out like out on the street, right? A little
Yeah.
flag,
Yeah.
right? Walk-ins welcome. I mean, whatever that you could do to create that curb appeal to get people into this into your office
Yep.
while you're building it, man, forget about it.
For
Keep it
sure.
simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That
All right, man.
was a good
We'll
one.
we'll keep building. We'll keep documenting. This is good stuff. Congrats on your first couple clients. For those of you that are listening, this is the BizJitsu Podcast. This is Vince Pacleb, your host, closing out a follow-up episode of the Groundwork Chiropractic project in Garden Grove, California, with Dr. Archie. Archie, did I miss anything?
No, that's it.
All right, man.
That was
Congrats,
great.
dude. We'll talk soon. See
Thanks.
you.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, I'm going to stop this real quick. All right, dude. I'm like.